Culture for me, culture means at the workplace because now we're talking in a working context. I think it's from the moment you enter the door or log into to a digital meeting, if we work remotely. I think how we talk to each other, how we interact, how we make sure that everyone is heard in a meeting, how we make decisions and everything. That together is culture. So, and I would say that is my specialty.
You're listening to the Global Inclusion in Practice podcast, sharing the stories of DEI changemakers around the world. Vivian Aqua and Marjolein Vlug bring you behind-the-scenes stories and kitchen table conversations about the personal perspectives of DEI professionals, representatives, advocates, and allies, talking about what matters in this work and what sustains us in creating lasting change. There are many of us working on creating a more inclusive world. Let's share our stories. We're in this together.
So, welcome, Kroon. Hope I'm saying that right in the Swedish, with the Swedish lilt to it. Welcome to the Global Inclusion in Practice podcast. Vivian and I are very excited to have you as our guest today, and we'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us, who are you at this moment in time, both professionally and personally?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I've been longing for this moment. We talked about it for such a long time, and now it's finally finally happening. I'm so happy for that. So, who am I? If I start a bit on my professional side, of course, I'm not going to go through all my resume, but I've been a leader now for 26 years. Actually, time flies. I'm 45 today, so that means that I started out really young. I started out as a leader when I was 21 years old. So from there, of course, I started out small, but from there, I already when I was young, I had quite high ambitions, and I knew that I wanted to, make a career for myself. Quite un-Swedish, I guess, maybe more American in a way, kind of. So from there, I built up, and I think if I can say it myself, it's gone pretty well. So I've had a lot of high leadership roles in Swedish or Nordic companies. For example, I've been innovation director at Vattenfall, who is an energy company in Europe that many know of. I've been many years in the insurance company in the Nordics. I'm then, the latest maybe 10 years transitioned into more HR or people and culture, even though I worked with people and culture and diversity and inclusion all my life in different roles. But I transitioned more into, the real, so to say, HR roles. So I've been HR director or chief human resource officer at tech companies in the Nordics and news media companies and so on. Blocket, who is a marketplace in Sweden, and Schibsted, who is a Norwegian actually media house. So I've done that for a lot of years, and I love being a leader. And about 1 year ago, I decided that I wanted to try my own wings. I wanted to try to be founder, to start my own company. So actually, I decided to abandon ship, so to say, and start my own company and work actually fully devoted to diversity and inclusion. So that's what I do today in my company called Black Batman. That I partly travel Europe to give lecture and keynotes about mostly inclusive leadership, because leadership is still my core, of course. And then the other part of my business is that I go more into companies long term or mid term to help them build strategies around diversity and inclusion and connect that to profitability, for example, and business success. But I know that we're coming back to that part, of course. On the personal side, I live in Stockholm, Sweden. As we talked about before we started recording, I'm newly married just 2 weeks ago. So I'm married to my husband, Lenny. We've been together for 12 years, actually. We have two dogs. We don't have kids, but if you or someone listening has dogs, you know that if you are a dog person, you are a dog person. So the dogs are kind of our kids. We spend all our free time at them. Two Labradors we have. Otherwise, of course, I work a lot. That if you are a founder, and right now I'm in a time and place where I'm giving a lot of time and effort to building my company. So that takes a lot of time. But on the side of that and our dogs, fitness and healthy lifestyle is a big interest of mine. Actually, I've been a top athlete in Sweden when I was younger in track and field. So even though I don't compete today, I still have that, mindset. I think that you have if you are in the top layer of being an athlete. You are, you give it everything you've got, and I still got that mindset when it comes to training and workout. So I work out 7 days a week because it's my way to find energy.
You mentioned a sport. What kind of sport were you? What's your sport as an athlete? Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, absolutely. I was into track and field, and of course, track and field is a big field. But I mainly was into what's the word for that? When you not sprint, but somewhere between sprinting and long distance, middle long distance, I guess is a word for that. But 800 meters, 1500 meters, that kind of, I guess it's kind of the worst thing to do in track and field because it's you have to give it everything, and it's it's I don't know how I found that to be such an amazing thing, but I did.
It's your sport, right? It's where you can really energize yourself. So I can totally. And when you
What does that say about you? That it's the middle long distance that is your zone.
That's a good question. I think it's when it comes to that kind of sport, it's even though it's an individual sport because I'm running for myself, but of course you have a team around you. So I would say that what it taught me at least what about a lot about mental strength because being a middle or being an athlete overall, I guess it's easy to think that it's just about the physical shape and the physical training in the gym and at the running and so on, but it's a lot of tactics. It's a lot about you need to be really strong mentally. I think I'm gonna admit that I didn't know that when I started out, so I had to work a lot on that because I didn't have that strength when I started out. So I guess to your question, I guess as I became successful, I guess it kind of says that I have kind of find the balance between how to find strength both mentally and physically in life and in business and so on.
of that, and what is an essential thing that you would love our listeners to know about you, but also to remember about you?
I think one thing that I'm proud of, and I guess that's one thing that I want to tell the listeners, is that I sometimes think when we talk about diversity and inclusion, I think we sometimes tends to boil that down to specific roles or a specific people and so on. But I think for me that is a leadership period, and I think that is something that I want to tell the listeners that I hope and think that it was before my time there when I started out. As I told you, at 21 years old, I worked with diversity inclusion, even though I didn't know about. I didn't understand that it was diversity inclusion because I worked with people. I understood that if I'm happy at work, I I'm a better employee and so on. So I think to your question, Vivian, I think that I want to tell the listeners that it's possible to whatever role you have. You don't have to work with DNI. You can work with anything or everything, but there is still a diversity and inclusion aspect of what you do. That is something that I'm proud. I'm proud that I've showed that to at least people in the Nordics. And sorry, you had a second part of that question that I forget now, I think.
No, to remember about you, but regarding to what you said right now, right? It feels like you are basically sharing that there is an accountability for everybody when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion in that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I love that Vivian, that you mentioned accountability because I think that is so important. And I think I've seen that a lot, and not maybe more early on in my career that we tend to some of us tend to say that it's someone else's problem, and even I think in I think we're coming back to that, but in minority groups, of course, I'm both I'm many minorities in one person. I'm both have dark skin and I'm a gay and so on. But I think in those minority groups, I also think I've seen that sometimes we tend to to get included. We tend to see that someone else's problem or someone else's task to include me, but I don't buy that. It's if I want to be included, it's my job also. It's a shared responsibility. So I really think the day we start to look at other people to do the job for us, then it won't happen.
Good one.
What's your flavor in DEI work or your specialty?
I would say culture, and of course, culture is. I'm going to explain that culture. It's a broad word, but I really believe culture. For me, culture means at a workplace, because now we're talking in a working context. I think it's from the moment you enter the door or log into to a digital meeting, if we work remotely. I think how we talk to each other, how we interact, how we make sure that everyone is heard in a meeting, how we make decisions and everything. That together is culture. So, and I would say that is my specialty because I hope that I'm and think that I'm good at seeing people, even though I see what you say, but I really hope also that I maybe see what you don't say, read between the lines. And I think that is the strength in being a leader, especially when you work with people, to really that you can read the situation, read the room, read the person, and so on. Because everything together, what you do, what you say, what you don't do, what you don't say, that is also culture. And when we are a large group, it's in this meeting is three of us. It's important to look at every one of us and understand our differences. And I think I'm really good at that. I'm good at knowing people and good at making sure that people are seen and heard and respected and valued because of their unique strength. Because that's how I have built my career, actually, making sure that everyone is seen and heard and connecting that to the business aspects.
What has made you good at that, do you think?
Many things I would say. Of course, it's an interest. It's a genuine interest. I'm not because I'm saying here genuine because I think there are leaders out there who know they are supposed to say that I love working with people because it's a part of leadership role, but maybe they don't love it. They love other parts of leadership, but that is something that comes with it. But I'm genuinely love to work with people, meaning that I love to interact with people, because I see my role as a leader not to be the specialist, not to be the specialist. If I work in HR, for example, and being the top leader in HR, I'm not the expert in HR. I'm good at HR, but I'm far from the best. But I'm the best at getting group together and build that culture because I'm interested in what drives you, what challenge you, or and so on. So that's I think interest or genuine interest is one part that have taken me there. I would also say, of course, I've thought a lot about this when I do my keynotes and so on. Of course, I had to think about it when I'm talking about this. I need to think about what you asked me now, what have taken me here, and I would say I think that my upbringing have part of that too. Of course, I cannot be sure of that, but if I look at my upbringing, I've had my parents, my mom and dad, they have always been super inclusive to everyone in society. I grew up in the northern part of Sweden, and for Christmases they always invited the lonely ones that didn't have anyone to celebrate with, or people who are kind of outcast in the society. So I lived through inclusion in practice. So I would like to think that that has shaped me in a way because my sister is the same. So I guess that says something. And also the third part is that I something that I didn't quite know when I started, but I think, and this is the part that is missing, I think, from business. I really saw quite early on that if we work with this, if we work with inclusion the right way, that boosts the profitability and that boosts the business results of a company. And I think has become kind of my core because there's a lot of people out there who are inspirational. There's a lot of people out there who are business minded, but I think in the intersection here, the people who are both and that can connect this part to actual profitability and business result. I'm trying to be that person because I've really seen that, and when I see that connection, it's so easy for me to do it because this is kind of a I'm not going to say it's an easy way to build a kind of successful company, but maybe it doesn't have to be so complex as we might think.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, I'm Vivian Aqua, the certified DEI consultant, and I would like to invite you to take your organization to the next level of understanding by collaborating with me. I specialize in helping organizations amplify their DEI initiatives and foster an inclusive environment. Reach out today to learn how I can help your organization unleash its hidden potential and create a culture of belonging.
What about this work is important for you?
About the diversity and inclusion work, you mean? First of all, I really think as a leader, I see that as, of course, it's a responsibility, and I take it really serious that I'm a role model. And I'm not saying that because I want to, talk myself up, but I think regardless of where you are in an organization. You can be at the top, you could be the CEO, you could be the manager in a lower position. If you are a leader, or if we are leaders, we have a responsibility and we are role models. That's truth. And we can choose to do what we want with that, but I choose to, to me, that's really important because I know that I have the power to influence other people, to influence the company culture, and I guess also have actually influenced society. That's what I'm trying to do today by doing this, for example, podcasts and doing a lot of media because I want to influence people. So, and that is to your question, Vivian, that is really important to me that I want to make an impact. And once again, that is maybe a bit more like American than Swedish because I really say it out loud that I want to make a big impact because that is important to me. Because to me, that is leadership, and that is also part of why I started my own company because I hope that I can reach a bigger audience in my own company when I'm more free to, so to say. If I am in an employee of a company, of course, I can create a lot of change, but quite often that is within the frames of that company. As I know, as my own businessman, I can do whatever I want, do whenever I want, and that is kind of a freedom that I think I like at least.
Yeah, I totally understand that. But I want to go back to your why behind this being important for you, right? Because you mentioned it from a business aspect, but I'm also looking from a personal aspect into why it is important for you.
And of course, I said that earlier on that I'm many minorities in one. I think sometimes I say that I've hit the diversity jackpot, being both from northern part of Sweden. That is that is one thing here, and of course, being a person of color and being openly gay and so on. And that is, even though that's not, something that defines me in any way. I'm a leader. I'm a leader, period. I'm not a gay leader. I'm not a black leader. I'm a leader. But with that said, I've seen so many minorities, struggling, both in society and in business. And if I once again look at the business, at least in Sweden or in the Nordics, it's it's still if you look at the top in the executive management and the boards, it's kind of a white man's world. That's how it is, and I guess that's the same in many places around the world. And I'm not in any way saying that these white men they are super. I'm confident that most of them are super good leaders. But the problem here is that there are so many minorities that don't get the same chances because of something that lies within their personality or their experience or skin color or sexuality and so on. And that is important to me. And that is to change that because that goes back to being a role model. Because when I grew up, I didn't have any role models. I mean, I had a really strong will to accomplish something, but I couldn't look at anyone. There was not anyone I could look up to and see that it's possible. There were not any black CEOs that I heard of, or absolutely no openly gay CEOs, because that's where I wanted to go, to the top. And of course, I think I had a strength to try to make it anyway. But at the same time, I don't think you should. We should not be. You shouldn't have to be like me. You should not have to have that strength to actually see that it's possible. So it's important to me because I really hope that the young generation or people coming after me will have someone to look up to and someone who they can point at or look at and say, oh, it's possible. And that goes not only, of course, for LGBTQ people or black people. It's the same for women, of course. And I think that is maybe that's in Sweden at least. The gender balance is maybe the diversity question we talk most about, at least in a business aspect, and that is really important. But I also would say it's important to have a broader perspective when we look at diversity and not only target on the gender diversity, even though it's important. But I think we can do many things at once, actually.
Yeah, and you sounds like you're becoming or have become the person you would wish to have seen when you were younger.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I hope so. I guess it's up to others to say, but yes, that's a goal I have, to become that person. Then if I am that person, I guess it's up to others to judge that. But I'm doing what I can to be a role model at least.
And as a role model and a doing DEI work, what can you not tolerate?
I could not tolerate that people don't want to try, because I can, once again, if I go back to business context, because that's where I feel most comfortable, that's because it's been my life. I think it's, it's totally fine if I start with what I can tolerate. I think it's totally fine to not know, to have, knowledge gaps and so on, because that's why people like us in this meeting exist, because we might have the knowledge of, in this case, diversity and inclusion. So I love when people are curious. I love when people ask for help and so on. So on the other side of that is something that I cannot tolerate within business. If you are, sitting with your arm crossed and say, this is not something I want to talk about. I don't know about it, but I don't want to learn about it. Because I really, once again, and that goes into leadership. If you are a leader, that includes being curious on things that you don't know about, or new things or unknown things and so on. So wanting to get better.
Yeah, that's one of the essentials, doing the work, doing the role well. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, wanting to learn is totally fine, and it's okay also to learn and try to learn and get it wrong if you learn from that. So, but not not wanting to learn, not wanting to get better, not wanting to keep up with time. That is it's not something that I would accept. And one more thing that I do not accept is not wanting to look into your own unconscious bias or your own biases, because that is something that is so important to me, and that I guess it's pretty simple actually, because everyone has biases. And if you're in a business context, those biases can be so dangerous, because that will affect how we recruit, how we promote, and everything. And if we recruit and if we promote not knowing about the biases, then we will probably recruit and promote people who are like us, more of the same. And that is, a structural problem when it comes to diversity, because I know that things cannot change today, maybe not tomorrow, but if we wanted to change things, we would need to look at, the bigger picture here. So I cannot accept people not wanting to look into their biases. And once again, that is about curiosity. It's about, being unafraid to learn about yourself and so on. So that's something that I always, when I do jobs for executive management teams or boards, that is something that I kind of demand that we have a session around that.
Is that different in your personal life? Or is it the same? Are there different things you don't tolerate? Oh,
No, I would say it's kind of the same flavor on it. Of course, it's not. I'm not sitting down with my friends and saying, "Now we're going to have have an education here." I'm not doing that. Or
yeah, that's different context. Sure. Yeah.
yes, exactly. It's the same, but at the same time, I mean, I'm going to be honest here. I think it's this is one of my, I'm not going to say problems, but I'm going to try to explain this, because I'm privileged. We all are in this call. All of us, probably everyone listens into, and that is of course a nice thing, being privileged. But at the same time, that means that I kind of end up in a bubble with people who are like me. I kind of hang out with people that I already know has the same views of life and me. They have the same values and so on. Of course, in one way that's natural, but that means that I doesn't, have to do so much, because I already know that everyone thinks like me in this. I don't have many friends that are on the opposite side of this, because probably if they were, I would probably have chosen a long time ago not to maybe hang out with them. So I'm trying to be conscious about that. That I know that in my personal life, I choose who I hang around. In my business context, I cannot do that, of course, and that's a good thing. But I think I need to be conscious about it. So to answer your question, I don't have to talk so much about diversity and inclusion in my personal life, because everyone I hang around with, they know me, they know where I stand. I know them, I know where they stand. It's something that is kind of a given.
Yes, I I can understand and relate to that as well. And I want you to imagine yourself, right? Sitting in a rocking chair at 98 O's, and what do you see from there, looking back to today?
I would say, because if I'm going to get back to that, but if I start looking back today and the change that happened since I started as a leader, I think that could say something where we will be in 40 years from now also, because a lot of things happen, and I think it happens nowadays it's happened really, really fast. When I started out, I felt that the society wasn't quite as fast, but of course with the social media and everything that happened technology, it's another speed today. So I hope I'm not saying that it's going to be like that. I think hope and maybe reality might be different things here. But if I start with what I hope to look back at is that we don't even have, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I don't think we need to have to talk about that. I hope that we see, when it comes to leadership, I hope that we see leadership, period. That's what we talk about. And when we say leadership, that of course then includes what we today call diversity and inclusion. I hope to look back and not seeing, the lists coming out every year when, there are still no female CEOs in the listed companies and so on. I don't hope to I hope that those lists are gone. I hope that, all the what should you say, hate crimes and discriminations about minorities. I really hope that that is not a question anymore, because I hope and actually think here that the young generation will change this. I really have high hopes for that. But it is so that's what I hope to look back at, a world where, of course, everyone is really treated equally. But at the same time, I'm not going to be a pessimist, of course not. But I think I'm super interested in politics, and of course, looking around in actually Sweden too, but out in the world, I think there's a lot of challenges, so to say, when it comes to politics. Because what I think we need to address better is which could I call this split today in opinions. I really feel that this is a problem, and it's also affecting workplaces, I would have to say, because maybe only 10 years ago, I feel, at least, and this is my personal opinion, I'm gonna say, I feel that it was more okay to have different opinions. We could discuss it. We could, have fruitful discussions around it, and it was kind of okay. Today, I really feel that the climate is so changed around that. If we have different opinions today, that is uh, sometimes leads to irreparable differences here, and it's kind of a hateful discussion, especially when it comes to politics. That is so loaded today, and this is not a good thing. And I think this might be one of the biggest threats to that progress that I hope to see, that we are not able to discuss differences. Because I really hope also in the future that we have differences, that we are, have different views on things, that we have different views on politics and on life and so on. But I hope that we have the same kind of value ground. But I kind of feel that that is going in the wrong direction today, at least in the countries that I know people. I know that it's a big world, and I don't have, insights in all the countries, but at least in the Nordics, or spend a lot of time in the States, and of course it's kind of the same thing there. So we need to be careful, I have to say, and watch out how we, how we start to, slide apart from each other.
I think the word that you were looking for, I think, is polarization, right? We have that here in the Netherlands as well, and elsewhere within Europe. You're seeing, at least I am seeing a different tension where there are companies that want to do DEI, but they are very careful because of the politics and the polarization that is happening at the moment right now.
Yes. And I think that is really, really important, because I did an interview a couple of weeks ago on that topic. And I think this is something that I can see a lot happening right now in the Nordics, at least, that when it comes to social sustainability, most companies today know that they need to work with that actively to, attract talents and retain talents and so on. But at the same time, with everything happening in the world today, that is kind of chaotic, of course, in many areas. There's also, especially from younger generation, younger talents, there is kind of demand to take a stance as social questions in war situations, and we have a lot of political situations or a question that is, it's kind of, as you said, polarized. And looking back at companies, I think companies are in regular kind of afraid to go into politics or something that can even touch to be political. And I think that's good, of course, that we keep this apart. But today, I think it's so hard to tell what is political today and what is, not political, because it's not clear. At least not to me, it's clear. So I think many companies will have a struggle here to actually, make a decision. What should they actually take stance in, and what should you keep, not say anything in? Because not saying anything also is
Yeah, when you say companies, you actually mean, I think you mean leaders. I mean, these are leaders that need to make those choices, and they're complex choices.
absolutely. And I think, I'm not saying that I know the answer here, but I think I know, I see that from my own, comments on LinkedIn and so on, that people want me to, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And why don't you say anything about this? We talk a lot about LGBTQ, but why do you not, say anything about this happening in the world? So it's hard. So I'm not, this is not going to be an easy solution, but I can really see that it's a huge demand for leaders and for role models and for companies to actually speak out. Or if you don't speak out, that is also saying something. And this is going to be interesting to see how, all the PR and the communication persons in the companies will, make a plan for this.
Hey, are you ready to rediscover focus, clarity, and resilience so that you can be a stronger change maker for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? I am Marjolein Vlug. I'm a certified coach. And whether you're getting started in DEI or are further along in your journey, I can support you to take your work to the next level. With me as your ally, you can gain clarity on your next initiatives or career goals, make intentional choices, stay accountable to them, deal with the intensity of the work, and create real change. Let's talk. I'd love to learn more about you. Reach out to book a chat.
This being the world that we live in, and this being the work that you do, what do you need for yourself to recharge?
I think I'm two things actually. One thing that is the, what do you say, the safety, or the something to fall back on, the safety net, or something like that. And in my case, that's my family, meaning my husband and our dogs. And that is actually also one reason why I dropped out from the big companies and starting my own company. That I wanted to see how that affected my work-life balance, because of course, being in those roles that I've been in for all my life, that is a lifestyle. That is not, a 9 to 5 work. It's a round the clock work, and that is fine, because that is what we get paid for. I'm not complaining, but I wanted to try something else, because I feel that I wanted to have some free time. So that is something that I recharge, actually, just doing nothing, just meaning not thinking about work all the time. And today I'm not do that. I don't do that. I can relax. And we talked in the beginning, I think, about sports, and that is also really my way to fuel energy. I love running, swimming, going to the gym. I do that so much, and I think, because to me it's not about, of course it's about health, but mainly it's about fueling energy and being a bit for myself, and running, especially at least the summer month in Sweden. I'm not doing in the winter, I mean winter month, but in the summer I love, going out in the forest and be there for hours, just, being by myself with music in my ears and reflecting on life.
Ugh, that sounds really good. Being by yourself and just music in your ears and reflecting on life.
Yeah.
I've already started my own company, but if I hadn't, that would be yeah.
And also what you shared, like doing all these different exercises, not only for health, but I do see it as a way for health, especially with this line of work where it can be challenging, right? When you're having a tough conversation or tough training or a tough day at work, that you need that to bounce back so that you are in balance. And the question that I have for you is, what opportunities do you see ahead? What does your gut or your intuition tell you?
Yeah. You mean for diversity and inclusion, or overall?
Or in general or in leadership? Yeah.
Yeah. I really think there is a kind of new new leadership on the rise, and that is, today we call it inclusive leadership. That was what I call my everything I do inclusive leadership. But I really, if I look at my business, and if my business should be anything of an answer about what's coming, I'm not saying it is, but I'm trying to see it that way. I think I talked a lot about curiosity a while back here. I see the curiosity about the top leaders in companies now are booming. So that is something that I hope shows that it's something happening. It's a trend happening in big companies. Because to be really, practical here, a while back or even when I was in companies doing things like diversity inclusion trainings, HR was often, the ordering part from the companies. Because these kind of questions, diversity inclusion tends to stay with HR, live with HR, and I have a lot of things to say about that too. But nowadays, it's not HR director or HR persons or culture persons that is, ordering or buying my services. It's the CEOs or the chairman of the boards, and that is a change. That is a big change, and I chose to see that as a trend. I chose to see it as something, that something is happening. How we look at diversity and inclusion. So I would say, looking maybe 3, 4, 5 years ahead, I would say that more and more companies will not see will stop seeing diversity and inclusion as something for HR or as something for people and culture departments. They will demand to see and understand the connection to profitability, because I think and one thing that I often talk about when I meet those leaders, when they ask, okay, if you could explain easily to us what is actually the connection, always start talking about the talent attraction part, because it's a fact that people, especially from maybe the younger generations, tend to choose employers that are authentic and active in their D&I work. So when I tell these leaders that if you want to be competitive in 5 or 10 years, this is not a choice you have, because your talents that you need to be competitive, they could potentially choose between a lot of companies wanting to have their competencies, and they will not choose you if you don't, have representation, if you don't show that you have, a walking the walk, a walking talk, and so on. So I think that will happen, and that is, I think, what the effect that will have, because of course that sounds good and I love that, but I think this comes with a challenge, because the challenge here, and once again, this is my personal opinion, I have to say that, but I think the challenge would be that, as today, that diversity and inclusion lies with many HR directors or HR departments. Those HR leaders need to step up. Those HR leaders needs to be able to have the strategic discussions. They need to be able to lift above classic HR processes. And I would say, in those years that I work within HR, I think that will be a challenge for many HR leaders, actually, because it's kind of new, at least in Nordic, that HR has a position in the executive management team. It's not always that still, but HR is kind of new in that room, in the deciding rooms. And quite often, I think that the HR leaders are joining the discussions when we talk about classic HR topics, recruitment or employee surveys, so on. And that is good, of course, but that is not HR. To me, HR, of course, that is the core processes. But the HR person in the company, the top HR person, should be involved in everything. And I think that is what's going to happen. I think the profile for HR leaders will be dramatically different in a couple of years than it is today.
Definitely.
You have a lot of vision on leadership, on HR, on how organizations run, on how DEI is integrated. And for some reason, the person I see in front of me, well, on our computer screen, I see the kid that you were, and the athlete, and that 21-year-old, and the 25-year-old, and the 30-year-old, and the 45-year-old, and the 98-year-old that we just brought in. What does that person deeply believe in?
I think that goes back to my core, of course. I think because you're right that the core has always been the same. I've just had found different ways to use that core, depending on my surroundings. But I think what lies there underneath, regardless of age, is the will to create something better, the will to make sure that everyone is seen and heard, make sure that everyone sees representation, and that is something that I know that I will always continue to do, and just I'm finding different platforms and different arenas to do that. But that is in everything I do, regardless if I visit a company or visit a board or do keynote or do podcast or talk to someone, talk to an employee somewhere. And that's the core, how can I help you to get more knowledge, to be better at what you do, to how can I give you strength and courage to speak up or dare to be yourself and so on. I think if I should break that down to a couple of words, I would say my core is curiosity and courage, and that will always be those characteristics that will continue to be with me.
I love that. And when it comes to giving people advice on what to do, like reading, watching movies, listening to podcasts, or reading articles, what are your top 3 or top 5 recommendations that you want to share on this podcast?
Yeah, and I would say I'm going to be honest. I'm not a big book reader, even though I'm writing a book right now. And I'm going to be honest with that because I sometimes think that, oh, I'm supposed to say something fancy now, but I'm going to be honest. So
Yes, you are.
Well, you can share the music that you put into your ears when you
yeah,
go
yeah.
outside. What are
But
your
of course, I have an answer because I read a lot. But what I do read is I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That can sound strange, but to me, LinkedIn is superb way to find that knowledge because to me it's kind of easy. It's easy to digest, and I have a big network there, and of course I'm connected with people who talk about leadership or diversity and inclusion. People like you, for example, and I think that gives me so much because I interact with people. I read their stories, their storytelling, their experiences, and so on. So to me, that is more than a book. I get a lot of books in the same package there, with the benefit that I actually can interact and send a message and ask questions, because if I don't understand anything, and I do that, I don't only read, I comment, or if I don't understand something, or maybe if I kindly disagree, I maybe reach out to that person and start a discussion. That's a great way for me to learn, and because I love to be challenged, and I love that people have different takes on diversity and inclusion that I have, because that's the way we get forward. So that's one thing that I really do. But I also have one favorite book, and actually it's in Swedish. I'm not sure if it's translated, but talking about role models, of course I myself have role models, and one woman, Swedish woman that I actually is one of my friends and I really like is Birgitta Olsson. She's a politician. She was a politician. Today she lives in the States, and she's reading a book called Duktiga flickors revansch, who is about in English being it's about being a good girl and everything that comes with that. You're supposed to do so many things, and there she talks a lot about being a minority, in her case a woman, of course, but being in high positions and what how it's different and what people expect of you. In her case, she was a minister in the government and she was a mom, and people question, can you really be a minister and secretary and be a mom at the same time? Who's going to take care of the kids and so on? So I think she really inspires me to, because I recognize so much in what she tells me in my own career and story. So she's a role model to me, and she's writing a book.
Thank you.
noted?
And another one?
I just have those, actually.
Let's share your favorite music. What music do you put in your ears?
I'm a pop guy, so I'm really easy that way. I love listening to pop music. So I usually do those, new automatic playlists on Spotify. But and this is so cliche, but I love Lady Gaga, for example.
Bring it on.
But all that, I'm really American in my music style, and the pop queens and kings of the states. I'm a sucker for those.
What's your favorite Lady Gaga song?
Oh, I love Born This Way. I love Born This Way. And actually, of course, that's the song with the message to everything she does as a message, I guess. But that's a strong statement song, also.
Powerful one. We'll put both the book and the song in the show notes. Our final question is your opportunity to connect with other people in DEI that are listening to our episode. What would you like to share? What would you like to give as a reminder?
I would say my biggest let's say, awakening maybe, or the thing that throughout my career that's been the one thing that I hope that people can find strength in is actually, looking at if you are a minority person or minority leader, it's so easy, I think, to sometimes, feel that it's a weakness or it's a struggle, and it can be absolutely. I really understand that, but I think my best advice to anyone who feels that they are not belonging or they are not a part of the majority, that could be in a business, it could be in the everyday life, is to try to flip that, because being a minority in a majority group, being the odd one out or the different person, I see that as a super strength, and I try to actually call that being different is a super strength in business, because I really believe it is. Because throughout my career, I've always been, the odd one. I've always been, when I started out, I was a young guy in a room filled with 60 years old. Then when I was not so young anymore, I was still, the only person of color in the room and the only openly gay person, and so on and so on. And I always chosen to see this as, okay, this is my opportunity to bring something unique into the room. Because if I sit in a room with people who kind of are the same, they will probably or likely have a kind of the same solution to the problems, or some of the same, outcome of the discussions. And I can bring something new because I have different experience and different backgrounds and everything. And that when I bring that unique perspective into a room, then they listen, because they feel that okay, he has something unique to contribute here. That is when my difference, it becomes a super strength. So I really try, and I know it's maybe easy to say, I know that, but I'm really saying it because I really believe it, that if you are in a business context, or if you are in a context that you can contribute with something unique, do that. And I'm sure that many will see that actually, if they haven't listened to you before, they will start listening to you then, because that is what's needed to build successful businesses. So, for example, we don't build success by saying yes to everything, and we don't build success with or by agreeing with the boss or just nodding. That is not how success is built. So success is built when we throw the wildest and most unexpected and innovative ideas on the table and discuss them. And that is what I do. I built my career on being that crazy guy in the leadership rooms that throw the unexpected on the table. And quite often, that unexpected solution is the one that we chose in the end.
Nice. I like that. That's what you chose in the end.
We build that on what first.
They picked it, put it on the table, and they chose it in the end.
Thank you so much for this conversation. It was really enlightening, and also enlightening to hear a personal aspect and also your professional aspect on your take on DEI and becoming a DEI change maker.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for listening. You're warmly invited to pause for a moment and think about what stood out to you from this conversation. Please share this episode with others to inspire them too. Make sure to subscribe to our Substack channel. We'll be back soon with more episodes. Be well, take care, and stay connected.